sure that's going. And it is. All right, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank especially Chris and the staff here at PhotoSynthesis for allowing me to do this and granting me the opportunity to share tonight with my work and what I have done and what you see around the room today. Just a brief background of what who Jerry Grasser really is. I started basically in 1975 in the film days, and my wife and I, we ended up traveling through the Orient, and we did a little bit of hiking on the Appalachian Trail, that kind of thing. And then, you know how it goes, we were young then, and the kids started coming in by the mid-'80s, so I switched over to the movie camera, and worked with the movie camera for a bunch of years, and then it was 2002 that I turned back to photography, enjoying the digital age. Had a Minolta fixed lens kind of camera. By 2004, I ended up deciding I wanted to be serious about my passion, and moved up to back then a whopping 8 megapixel Canon 20D. And that was a great camera for its day. I started taking classes and to learn about photography in the true artistic sense. And my first mentor is here, Mallory Osterwitz, who's shown marvelous work here in the past. It was Mallory who taught me my love for abstraction, and I thank you so much for. Look what you've created! You've created a monster!
Hardly a monster.
Well, we had some fun. And you know how it goes. If you've been serious about your work, you get all revved up about it, and then all of a sudden you hit a valley, right? You decide, well, gee, am I really good? How can I break through and do something different, right? Two valleys, huh? Well, it was about 2009 I discovered John Paul Caponegro, and he had a workshop called Creativity. And I went up to Maine and took that class, and lo and behold, I learned you really can learn creativity. So I was amazed at that. And several classes more with him. I got to meet his wonderful dad, Paul Caponegro, who, just a wonderful man. A lot of stories with him. And then I just essentially took off from there and started concentrating more on abstraction and the intimate landscape or the intimate cityscape or art such as that. So, as far as my art, my work is concerned, I want to awaken your inner child. That's really the motto on my website. If you go up to my website, I have a mission statement that talks about the importance of awakening your inner child. My philosophy has been, and I'm sure you've all been there and you understand this, there are so many people out these days with point and shoots, right? The phone cameras. I can't tell you how many times going through Grand Canyon, you see people sticking out their phones out the window like this, click, got it, move on. And that's really what art has come to people, in today, it seems. So I think we've lost the sense of imagination. As we get older, everything's black and white. Numbers are either right or wrong. Money is either good or not good, or that kind of thing. So essentially, I want you to really explore your creativity. I'm hoping that when you look at my work, that you'll linger just that extra minute more and really look at, let your imagination go wild and see some stuff that maybe, is more than is that just a picture of a tree? Nah, if you look at it, it might be something a little bit different than that. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Another theme that I like to shoot with my art, no pun intended, is history with mystery. I love history, whether it be it ancient history or not so ancient history. I like to play this little game when I go to archaeological sites or anything from historical times, and I try to envision what it must have been like to live during that time in history. What were they thinking about? What were their hopes and fears? So I'll research as much as I can a location before I get there, so I know. I already have a feeling, a preconceived idea in my mind of what I want to do. And so I use that history perspective to jumpstart me into a location that I decide to pick. But with that sense of history, I like that little touch of mystery. I like little shades and shadowing with stuff. It doesn't always work out with everything that I do, but I like that mysterious side of things. It spurs on the imagination, I feel, all that more. So history with mystery is a big thing that I try to do. Now, as far as this project is concerned, it had its earliest beginnings, its first spark, if you will, back in 1970. That was the summer between my junior and senior year in high school, of all things, where I was fortunate enough to study Spanish in Spain. And we traveled to most of the locations throughout southern Spain and even northern Spain. And of course, what do you remember from that length of time back in the 70s? I don't remember specifics, but I did remember impressions. And I vowed that someday I would go back and try to capture what I felt. For me, it's photography is about what you feel and how you can portray your feelings in a way that other people can kind of feel the same thing, if you will. So we decided in 2014, in May of 2014, my wife and I were going to go to southern Spain, and I've got my fancy equipment now. I'm armed to the teeth. I've got my love from abstraction from Mallory, and I'm ready to go. Well, of course, as luck would have it, I had an ongoing minor health issue that caused me to fracture my spine in several places. And that happened in February before the May trip. So any of you who've had back problems, you know the pain that you can have, and it can be pretty intense and debilitating. And it was for me, and my wife and I, we had to make a go, no-go kind of decision. Are we going to do this, and what kind of shape, if you make it over there, survive the 8-hour plane ride, what shape are you going to be in? So I said, what the heck, we spent the money, roll the dice. It's another favorite saying I say all the time. My kids always get on me about it. Anyway, we decided to do that, packed up my straps and put them on and went over there. And I left a lot of my equipment behind because I figured there's not a snowball's chance that I was going to be able to do anything serious. Because I didn't feel up to par, but I figured, well, I'm going to take my one camera. I ended up bringing the Nikon D800E, and I brought a 28 to 300 lens. I also brought my 14 to 24 with me, and I brought a tripod. What was I thinking? So I set up the tripod in the first location, took about 3 pictures, enough of that, couldn't handle it. It was, I didn't have the stamina, didn't have the strength to really do that. My wife was just, she was just wondrous because, well, she knows how I am with my art, and she was my Sherpa. She carried my tripod, she carried my extra lens, whatever I needed. She said she's there for me, and God bless her, she was, and it was marvelous. It really was. But I got to tell you, everything you see around here was shot handheld. And it was, in some situations, I was down to 1/6 of a second shooting some of these pictures. don't get me wrong, there is some blur in this, but I was prepared enough. You know, you use the old brace technique, right? I've got vibration reduction turned on with the lens. I'm leaning up against the pillars. I'm sitting in the pews. You know, whatever it takes to, you know, like really take advantage of tripod-like actions as best I could. And of course, you know, when I got back, with the help of Photoshop, I was able to, you know, salvage a lot of the clarity that you see here. And of course, that tool is marvelous. So that's where that pretty much came from. So Moorish Influences, which is the topic of this particular project, can really be seen in the way the art was set up in the forts, the mosques, and the palaces throughout southern Spain, from the Moorish domination from the early 700 ADs right up to 1492. That was the time period we're talking about here. All these shots here date back to the early forts of the Moors, anywhere in the early to late 700s, where they had their start. And of course, they all morphed into, you know, either the mosques or the palaces or both. So that was pretty interesting. When you think of the Moors, you have to think of Islam and the Islamic view of the world. The Islamic view of the world was that everything was for the glory of God, and submission to God was paramount. In their eyes, what they tried to do with their art was they tried to discourage their artists and their artisans from using human depictions or animal depictions. Everything was floral and geometry. So that was rather interesting that I discovered that. Also, when you think of the Moors and Islam and the architecture from that time period, you have to think of two major themes. One is the arabesque, and the other is calligraphy. And the place and manner in which these two major terms really coalesced and really expounded and brought to life each other. Arabesque, in case you're not familiar, is more of fractal geometry. Now go figure, back in the 700s, these guys, phenomenal engineers, phenomenal artisans, had fractal geometry figured out. And by fractal geometry, I mean the radiating lines, the repeating patterns that are all drawn to scale using geometry. But it doesn't stop there. They're scaled from small to medium to large, depending on, of course, how big the surface was that they were trying to cover. And so you had scales large within mediums, within smalls, with the details just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. So when you think of arabesque, that's what I'm referring to. A lot of the structures that they use with the arabesque style was tendrils of plants. So with tendrils of plants, the geometric shapes and designs, and ceramic tile. They were masters at ceramic tile. I'll show you later. If you're interested, I have a shot of one of the ceramic tiles that they have. But they did this a lot in all their structures. The other term, of course, is calligraphy. And calligraphy, for them, was the visual expression of art, of what they consider art to be the best in that. It's the visual expression of the spoken word is what they felt was the basis of calligraphy. So you'll see in a lot of the artwork on their walls, calligraphy for them, of course, Islam, the Quran. A lot of the inscriptions came from within the Quran, and God is the only victor. was repeated constantly throughout the walls and a lot of the, have a seat. So calligraphy was very, very important. And as far as the other aspects of the Moors, we ended up going to 4 locations in southern Spain. We went to Cordoba, Sevilla, Malaga, and of course Granada. Those were the 4 main sites that we toured and we went. And of course we did this on our own. There was no tour involved. We jumped in a car, rented a car, and that's one of the nice things, you know, whereas if you're on a bus with tour with people, you're kind of jammed in, you got a tight time frame, and you know, so it's a little bit more leisurely, especially with my back situation. It was better. So as far as the first spot was the Great Mosque at Cordoba, La Mezquita in Spanish, which means mosque. The greatest architectural highlight, if you will, in Cordoba of the Great Mosque was the famous candy cane arches. Phenomenal. These were like dual arches, okay, throughout the entire structure. And they were alternating colors of red and white, hence, you know, the candy cane effect. And the red, of course, was jasper rock, and the white was a mixture of granite and marble. So it was just phenomenal to see that scattered throughout the structure. That said, you know, you look, your marble, we're walking around, you know, dazed by the fantastic architecture, then you walk into the structure itself, and it's a Catholic church. And you're saying, well, what gives with that? You know, here you are, we're talking about a fort and palace, you know, with the sultans and all that back in the 700s, and all of a sudden you got this church. Gorgeous, phenomenal. I mean, don't get me wrong, fantastic church. But what they did was they gutted the whole inside. The reason for that was it was the Reconquista, which is the reconquering of Spain by the Catholic monarchy of Ferdinand and Isabel, the same 2 who were responsible for Christopher Columbus. They were on a mission to reunite all of Spain. And of course, what did that mean? Kick the Moors out. And as they kicked the Moors out, Islam, oh, you can't have Islam, we're Catholics here, you know, the Pope and all this, you know, we gotta do away with everything that the Islam had. So what do? You convert it into Catholic churches. Beautiful. And again, they were artists in and of themselves to be able to do that. The other thing with the Great Mosque at Cordoba was a style called hypostyle architecture. What that means is you have these large rooms that are open often, and they're excuse me, and they're loaded with pillars. And the Great Mosque at Cordoba had over 850 of these pillars. 850. Just outrageous. It really was. It was a marvel in and of itself just to see that much. So, of course, had to feel elated with all that. The other example, which was, I think, the finest example in southern Spain, is the Alhambra in Granada. That was the last stop on the Moorish Express, if you will, because that was the last holdout. 1492, they were kicked out of the siege of the Alhambra, and that was the end of the Moorish occupation in Spain at the time. So, but up until from, say, the mid to late 700s, as the structure evolved over time, it you know, went from a fort into a palace where the Sultan had this, and I think the finest spot within the Alhambra is the Great Hall. And the Great Hall, in fact, here it is here. This is the dome of the Great Hall here. And everything's stucco, all these amazing artwork in stucco. We have these stalagmite things that are hanging down from the ceiling.